Have you ever felt buried in busy work, second guessing what to hand off, or wondering why growth still feels so darn heavy? Then this podcast is for you. Welcome to Delegate to Elevate, Get Done, where real conversations help you lead smarter, delegate better, and take more off your plate. Here's your host, me, Bonnie Schutz. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Delegate to Elevate, Get Done. I'm your host, Bonnie Schutz, coming back to you today with another amazing guest that I completely stalked on LinkedIn and begged her to be on the podcast. Just kidding. Hi, Brooke.
Hi, how are you? I love that you found me on LinkedIn. So,
good. It just shows that what you're doing works. So let me tell everybody a little bit about you. So Brooke Duffy is a go-to-market and revenue leader who builds B2B SaaS and services companies helps build B2B SaaS and service companies and to turn their growth ambition into clear, repeatable execution. She partners with founders and executive teams to align marketing, sales, and customer experience around what actually drives sustainable revenue. Beyond her work advising high-growth companies, Brooke is a passionate champion for women in leadership, healthy definitions of success, and more honest conversations about work-life balance and mental health in the workplace. Super important. She believes that strong businesses are built by whole humans, not burnout, and brings that perspective to every leadership conversation she's a part of. Brooke is a founding member of Chief Boston and an executive member of Pavilion, where she actively engages with senior leaders navigating growth, scale, and personal sustainability. Welcome again, Brooke. Thank you for being here.
thank you so much for having me, Bonnie. I'm super excited for this.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. So we had a little chit chat before we hit record today. And I would like you, if you could, Brooke, tell people where you were, where you are now, and where you're going in your business.
Yeah. So it's really interesting. My career has been definitely not a straight line. It's been quite the journey, but where I am now is very much focused on supporting really startup and scale ups, which are very chaotic businesses.
Yeah.
So I like to say that my function is to make order out of chaos. And basically, I go into these companies and I help their executive leaders figure out how do we scale? What are the right processes? Who are the right people? Which technologies do we need? What is that messaging that has to go out into the market?
Yeah.
Do a lot of listening with the market and really help them figure out how to make growth repeatable. It is definitely not for the faint of heart because there's so much that has to get done. And I think my career to this point really put me in a good position to do this role because I've sort of held every function on
Sure.
a commercial side. So sales, marketing, account management, customer success, and led all of those functions. And I really know that it takes an entire team singing together, which is a lot about what we'll talk about today, right? One
Yeah.
person can't
Yes.
do all of this. One person
Mm-mm.
can't scale a business. And it's a lot about delegating. It's a lot about leaning into team and teamwork. And I've
Mhm.
had to do that myself. And so now I'm able to
Sure.
come in and bring sort of that wisdom to these companies and help them figure out how to do it well.
Oh, love that. Yes, for sure. So what is something that you delegated? You mentioned you've done that yourself in your career. What's something you've delegated and how was that experience?
Yeah, it's really interesting, Bonnie, because at my heart, I'm a marketer. So I grew up in marketing first before I took on sales, account management, customer success. I've even led a product
Mhm.
team before.
Okay.
But with marketing, I was a little bit more of a marketing generalist. And when I was starting out and at that time of my career, marketing was becoming much more specialized.
Yeah.
So there was, individuals that were much more focused on demand generation or branding or
Right.
marketing communications. And I always had the experience across the board from marketing. So what's interesting is what's the saying? It's, a jack of all trades, an ace of none.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of how I viewed myself. But what that forced me to do was to have to delegate because I knew that there were certain things that I didn't have the skill set for, or I didn't have the depth of knowledge for.
Yeah.
And so I needed to find really good people. And it wasn't always building a team under me. Sometimes it was delegating to consultants.
Sure.
Sometimes I even delegated internally to subject matter experts and thought leaders within the
Ooh,
organization to help me get
yes.
messaging and things like that right. So I think there's been many things things over my career that I've delegated. It wasn't easy, right? I think everybody, especially early on in a career, you feel like you have to do it all, otherwise you're not
Right.
bringing value. But I think
Hmm.
being the person that can put the pieces of the puzzle together is a really important function too, and that means you're
Yeah.
delegating.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you mentioned subject matter experts. I don't think we've mentioned that on our show. So I'm glad that's my little golden nugget there. That's what we call them when you drop something good for me. Subject matter experts. That's an epiphany I've not had. That's something great to delegate. What's that
Yeah.
experience like, or what's a sample or example of something that a subject matter expert would help you with?
Yeah. So it's I think wildly important in the companies that I'm supporting. Most of the companies, so I've always been B2B SaaS and services, but I've been
Hmm.
industry agnostic. And
Okay.
so I go into a lot of industries and it's a new world for me and I don't necessarily know the ins and outs. I haven't lived
Right.
a career in this industry. And so subject matter experts serve a couple of purposes for me. One, they really help educate me, right? And get me up
Yeah.
to speed. Um, I think no matter how good a company's onboarding program is, you need to do a lot of self-learning. And so I
Sure.
would seek out those experts to pick their brain, to have long conversations with, to really understand what I'm getting into. But
Hmm.
then second to that, they are an incredible voice for the company. So whether that's internal or external, and internal I think is one of the more important. You know, it's always important when you're putting it out in the market, but you
Right.
need to get your internal teams on the journey with you, right? They need to see the future vision. They have to be riding that same
Hmm.
train and excited about where they're going. And I
Yeah.
think subject matter experts can really help people to understand, hey, this was the problem we were solving when we started this company. This is the frustrations. Most of the SMEs I've worked with tend to come from whatever problem they're solving, right? So they were on
Right.
the other side of the table. And so
Yeah.
they can talk about it very firsthand. Wonderful in marketing, right? Really helpful in sales conversations sometimes.
Sure.
Great with customers to build that trust and rapport, but especially for internal to get
Hmm.
everybody moving in the same direction and really bought into the vision. I find
Right.
SMEs to be invaluable.
Is that sometimes the same person as the CEO or the founder?
It can be. It's not
Sure.
always. I've
Okay.
actually found more often than not, it's not. I think the founder tends to be somebody who is most of the founders I've worked with have really been product people. And so they're
Okay.
a little bit more, they build the machine.
Yeah.
Maybe they sat on the other side, maybe they have some knowledge, but they're probably a little bit younger. Whereas the
Sure.
SMEs tend to be somebody they took along and they've been in
Okay.
the career for, decades longer than the CEO founder.
Yeah.
And so they make a really good team, right?
Nice.
That's just been my experience.
No, I love that, and it's given me that moment. Things that make you say,
Right.
maybe for growth and scale of my own businesses, I need to find some SMEs. That's great, great little golden nugget for us to
Yep.
share with everybody today. So let's see, stories. I love
Yeah.
stories. So, do you have any stories of when a client has brought you on, and they've been a little bit of work for you, a little bit of extra work?
So, absolutely. I have plenty of these stories. What's interesting is, and I was just talking to somebody about this the other day, I have gotten better over the years. So I've been consulting now since 2018.
Okay.
And I have gotten better over the years of understanding which clients are better for me to work with. And what I find is the most challenging ones are the ones that won't delegate to me, right? Like
Ooh,
they
right.
don't actually engage me enough. They're not bringing me into the fold of the company.
Mm,
They're still holding things too close to the chest. I don't have all of the insight and all of the knowledge. And
mm,
that's just, it
mm.
makes it really challenging for me to
Yeah,
be impactful. I don't know. Sometimes I don't think it's done intentionally, right? I think it's, again, working with founders
human.
and CEOs
Yeah.
and executive teams that are trying to build something. They want to build it and they're protective of it. And so it's just
Sure.
nature, I think. But it's definitely, that's the biggest hindrance for me is when they don't lean into actually delegating to me because
Yeah.
then I can't be effective. And then it's not a good spend of money. And then it just doesn't have a
Right.
good relationship, right? It's not good for anybody. It's a lose
Yeah, that's
lose.
a very good tip, and we say it often on this show, is let it go.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
brought her on, you've done your due diligence to find somebody with your expertise, it's like you've got to be able to let it go. So if you don't feel like you can let it go, then don't bring her on. You
Exactly.
know?
And I'm happy to help them on that journey. So a lot of
Good.
times I'm sort of coaching these executive teams to
Mhm.
realize that they have to do that. So I know it's not perfect usually, that I'm not
Sure.
going in somewhere and they're just going to say, "Okay, great, you're here, you can do this."
This is yours.
Um,
Yeah.
but you have to get to that point, right? And I've
Yeah.
unfortunately had the experience where not everybody wants to get to that point, and that's a real
Mm.
struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a different way to say let it go. If they're not ready and you find that after the fact, after you've started, it's maybe good to let you go.
Yeah.
Or let them go on that side of your as you're on your client side, we're not a good fit.
And I've had those conversations where I'm like,
Yeah.
"This is not working. It's not working for you, so it's not working for me." And, sometimes, yeah, you gotta let it go.
And it's important to realize that happens.
Yeah,
Sometimes you're just not ready. You think you are, and you get in there and you just can't do it. And
exactly.
like you said, that's a waste of money and time and all
Yeah,
the things until you're ready. And that's okay if you're not ready, right?
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. I
it'll
can't
come.
say that, like, if somebody is giving me too much work, I'm happy with it, right? It's not that I'm necessarily going to do it, but I would rather have that problem because I can help them solve it. I can help them figure
Mm.
out, well, this is how we're going to get this done, or this is how we're going to prioritize. Most of the companies that I support have a problem prioritizing. They want to do it all, and
Yeah.
it's impossible. And
No.
so it's helping them prioritize and then figuring out, well, who can you tap into in your team to do some of these
Yeah.
things?
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
So,
That's
and
great.
or I have a huge network. So I can tap into other consultants, and I have certain people that I have often brought on to engagements because,
Yeah.
hey, I'm one person and my engagement is so much and I can't do it, but I have somebody great who can step in and also
Oh,
help this. So,
that's fantastic. Thank you for doing that. I mean, for the rest of us that are professional service providers, that's another great little tip.
yeah,
Bring in who you know.
exactly.
If your clients are like kind of overstepping or giving you a little too much, bring in who you know. Just say, "Hey, Bob, I really know this other person who is an SME in XYZ, and I would love to bring them on, working in tandem with me to help you even more." Oh my gosh,
Exactly.
just love that.
Yeah.
Mic drop. I love it. Well, you're just throwing them at me, the SMEs and bring in who you know. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. If it's nothing better than, your network is your net worth, however that saying goes, and it's who you know. And I think your clients probably trust your opinion on that. Don't you
Yeah.
think?
So
I
I've
know
been
I do.
lucky that they do, right? And I think that's huge. But I mean, you're right. Your network is very important. And I very much advocate for this consistently because I'm a huge networker and I'm out
Same.
there and I go to all these things and I really try to be a part of a network. But that also means that you're supporting your network, right? It's not just
Yeah.
about what you get back from them. And so that's an opportunity to say, hey, I've got something for you.
Ah, that's amazing. All right. Well, let's see. What else can you tell us about when you have a client that is engaging with you? How long is like the term with you? Is it like a 6-month term that they get, or is it like a deliverable and then you're done?
So I work in both capacities. Sometimes,
Okay.
oftentimes, I start with a deliverable where I'm coming in and doing a big assessment of their go to market.
Okay.
So their sales, marketing, account management, customer success teams, their client health, their pipeline health, marketing metrics. I'm doing this whole assessment to kind of say, hey, here's the gaps. Here's what I would recommend you start to tackle. Here's the, recommended team structure, what's working, what's not.
Hmm.
And so that is typically like a 4 to 6 week assessment. And then from there, I tend to come into like a monthly retainer
Okay.
where I'm supporting them as a consultant, depending upon what comes out of that assessment, right? So it's all different. The minimum is usually 3 months. The maximum is honestly 9 months has been the
Okay.
maximum. And it's because at this stage of growth, we really need to see certain things happen in short amount of times, right? So I
Yeah.
very much understand where these companies are at from a P&L perspective. And so it's like, let's get, the next 3 months squared away and see where we are. Let's go the next 3 months and see where we are. Or maybe
Yeah.
it's a 6 month engagement and we're seeing where we are. So
Sure.
that's, I try to be very flexible in how I approach the engagements.
Yeah, that's great. What a valuable service. I mean, that's just amazing.
Thanks.
I'd like to go back to the way I found you on LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about where you came up with this wonderful strategy and all the copy that you come up with. I absolutely love
Thank
watching and
you.
reading your stuff.
Thank you. It's funny. I didn't really I did not put any thought into this when I started. So that's the
Okay.
honest truth.
Interesting.
Yep, no, I just decided to start having a voice. I felt very much like there are important conversations that need to be had in professional settings. And I felt like LinkedIn was a good place to do this. And so I
Mhm.
started, and I didn't expect really much to come from it. Again, I didn't have a plan, I didn't have an expectation. I just wanted to have a voice. And then it
Yeah.
kind of ballooned into this wonderful part of my brand and piece of my experience. And I really hope that people enjoy what I put out there and that they learn something, and maybe it makes them think about something or do something differently. And sometimes it sparks conversation and even debate where people disagree. And I
Sure.
think that's welcome too. As
Yeah.
far as like what I'm putting out there, most of the time, it's something that is going on in my life around that time. So I
Mhm.
see something, or I'm experiencing something in one of my engagements, or personally something is happening in my life.
Yeah.
And that's where my content really comes from. So it is very authentic. And I tell people all the time, if you're
Yeah.
going to engage, I think in any platform, I know LinkedIn, I don't know the other ones, but I
Yeah.
think any platform, I think you have to be really authentic. So,
Yeah.
kind of lean into what is going on in your life. And I think that voice does kind of rise a little bit
Yeah.
higher or louder in the sea of everybody else. So,
Yeah. Well, then you're gonna attract your people, and I like to think I'm one of your people. You're gonna attract your people, and then, when you start to maybe they engage more in your LinkedIn posts, but then they also remember you as a potential service provider in the future for their needs. And
yeah.
so if I think of it in a kind of roundabout way, you're kind of delegating to LinkedIn to grow those relationships for you. And that's great. And I think that's going to propel your business if it hasn't already.
Yeah. No, I mean, it really has. It's also, I've gotten a lot of job offers through it, which is
Okay.
interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I definitely say I'm delegating a piece of something to LinkedIn. It does take
Yeah.
work, right? I'm actually still
Sure.
doing this very manually. I know there's a lot better ways to do it, but I haven't
Sure.
let that go yet. So,
Yeah.
it still takes work, but to an extent, I'm utilizing that platform to kind of be the volume of
Hmm.
my brand and my voice and my
Sure.
perspective.
Are you open to delegating that or outsourcing something like that? Because it seems like you've got a lot of good content and copy that someone that's a pro and has all the time to just focus on that could do for you at some day.
Yeah, I would say someday. I actually just launched a Substack as well, so I have
Okay. Great.
a bunch of articles out there, and I'll continue that. I feel like with both of these platforms now, I will probably get to that point where I will have to delegate, and I do
Great.
think that'll be a hard moment for me
Yeah.
because again, I feel like the authenticity of this is me, this is my voice, this is me
Yeah.
actually doing it. But I do think there are ways that you can do. I being a marketer, I know so many great social media people and
Oh,
content
yeah.
people,
Sure.
and they do amazing work. And whether they're ghostwriting or writing on their
Yeah.
own, they do amazing work. So yeah, I'll
Yeah.
get there one day. I'm sure of it,
That's
Bonnie.
okay. I completely understand. Let me tell you, after being an EA in corporate for so many years, my email and my calendar are still mine.
Yeah, right?
It's like doctors are the worst patients. EAs are the worst delegators of their calendars. And
I
I
get it.
realize, that is a weakness I have when I'm preaching out here to everybody to delegate. But, there's plenty of other things in my business that I don't feel so close to that I have
Yeah.
delegated. But yes, I realize that in order to propel my business in the future, if I want to scale, I mean, it's okay to not scale from where you're at
Hmm.
always, but if I want to, I will bring somebody in because I know that's going to free up my time and energy to be in my zone of genius, like I said, or my
Totally.
my happy place. That's it, my happy place, and where I work best, which is like one-on-one conversations with people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, how has your business evolved? Has when you started it, you said 2018 is about the time you got started. Has it evolved or changed over the years?
It's definitely evolved. So really how it came to be, again, I didn't seek out doing this either. I was employed full time, and I've been reporting to a board of directors for many years.
Mm.
When around 2018, the board that I was reporting to, a couple of the board members wanted to bring me into their other companies in their portfolio to
Okay.
advise and support. And so that was really the impetus for me going into consulting and advisory work. And
Yeah.
then I've reported to several boards since then, and the same thing has kind of happened. So
Hmm.
I guess serendipitously fell into this, but
Yeah.
how it's evolved is, one, I am now seeking out these engagements. So it's definitely transitioned from a reactive, you know,
Yeah.
work experience to a very proactive one. But also, they're definitely bigger engagements. So when I started, it was a lot of just advisory,
Yeah.
minimal inputs, really just sort of coaching advisory on the go to market side.
Yeah.
Now it is very much I'm coming in to really do deep assessments, really produce. I'm even sitting in the board rooms and helping to report
Nice.
into the board for these companies. So
Hmm.
it's grown in both ways very quickly.
Sure. Yeah. Boy, I love the idea of getting in on a board or in support of a board. Again, another thing you brought to the table.
Yep.
Being an EA, I spent many a days in board meetings.
Yeah.
But that's great. That's a nice little thing to recommend to people is if you can be board adjacent in some way. And, like if there's something that an industry that you really love, there's ways to get on boards. Just saying that's another way to network
No,
because board
absolutely.
members
And
work for have their own businesses most likely, or their work for own companies.
right. But I feel like today too, almost every company has a board, right? It's rare
Right.
that they don't have. Even privately
Right.
held companies are going to have their boards. So it's a
Hmm.
great opportunity to get in
Sure.
and at that level, which it's interesting, right? So I'm very much at my heart an operator, which is why I sit in this seat really well. I've always done great in the boardroom. I know what the board wants to hear and what they want to see and what
Yeah.
matters to them, but I'm an operator at heart, right? I want to come in and fix and solve that actual puzzle. But if you have the opportunity to sit that board level, especially if you're used to being an operator, it is a different conversation. And I think
Sure.
it's really great learning that what happens there is very different than what people in the business are used to on a day to day basis.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, I understand why people have boards because that's a great mind power hive to delegate to get ideas on how to
Yeah.
grow and scale your business. Yeah, boards. Just saying. That's a
Yep.
really good idea for our people listening is boards. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Now I've heard of Chief. What
Yeah.
is Chief? I haven't really dove into what it is.
Yeah, Chief is an executive network for female leaders.
Okay.
So it was started by these two women in New York City who felt as they were rising up in their career, it was getting lonelier and lonelier because
Mm.
they were the only woman with a seat at the table. What's really interesting for me is and as a founding member, I've been a member since 2020. So this
Mhm.
is, 6 years ago when this was happening. I felt at that time that, oh, it didn't matter if I was the only female with a seat at the table, which I was. I was the only
Yeah.
one in the boardroom.
Wow.
Um, but the reality is they weren't wrong. It does feel quite lonely.
Mhm.
And men and women definitely think differently. So to have somebody to kind of bounce things off of that has a similar experience with a similar mentality as you, I think
Yeah.
is really important. So what Chief really does is it brings this massive network of executive level women together.
Mhm.
We network, there's educational resources, there's a lot of content that they provide.
Sure.
We also get executive coached. So I'm in a core group. That means there's a handful of us that every month we get executive coached together. And
Nice.
I've grown with these women, right? They've become my
Sure.
sounding board. None of us have worked in the same place together, but they're now my
Okay.
sounding board. And yeah, it's been a wonderful
Mm.
experience.
That's like here I go again with my delegation stories. That's like delegating your mind to, again, another collaborative of people that really can relate to where you are because we're all women. And women
Exactly.
are so good at supporting other women. So check out Chief, everybody.
Yeah,
I'll give
for
them a little
sure.
shameless plug.
No, and I think what's amazing is when I first started out and was coming up, I don't know that women were all that supportive to other women, right? Because
Okay.
there was
Yeah, a
only
little
one
bit of
seat at the table. So I think it
yeah,
got a little competitive.
sure.
And you can't blame the women, right?
No.
Because if there's only one seat and everybody wants it, what are you going to
Yeah.
do? what I
You got to
found
earn
almost
earn it.
right? What I found almost instantaneously with Chief is it is an extremely supportive network. So
Nice.
I have reached out to women in Chief that I have no other connection to. They could be across the country
Yeah.
and I'm reaching out to them for help with something and they instantly reply. They're happy to help. It is a wonderful network for that reason.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you're very smart to join an organization like that. I've done a few of those myself and it's so fulfilling and
Yeah,
so my return on investment is immense with just being able to talk to people like yourself. If I was a chief member right now, talking to somebody else and just kind of commiserating, collaborating, all the C's with each
right.
other. It's so important and it helps you with any struggle that you may have in outsourcing something in your business as well as delegating to someone on your team if you're struggling. Do you have more people in that network to ask? Because some of them have been there and done that for
Well,
sure.
and so much of it is that exactly, right? It's always helpful to connect with somebody who's been there, done that, gone through it.
Right.
So a lot of it is just kind of that where you
Yeah.
can realize you're not alone in this experience.
Yeah.
You will get to the other side of whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's hugely helpful.
Exactly. I love that. You're not alone in the delegation experience. I just keep knocking them off you. You're not
Yep.
alone and you will get through it. And I always say it's a little bit like a spectrum, a delegation spectrum. Like,
Yes.
if you start out, picking up the little hand weights and then you can get to the power pressing if you want to. And it's okay
Right.
to just think about letting go a little bit and baby steps, right?
Yeah. I can
Whenever you
tell you,
can.
Bonnie.
Hmm.
So I was at a chief event. This is a perfect story for this
Okay.
podcast. I was
Good.
at a chief
Good.
event and it was at the time I was selling into pharma. So it was all
Okay.
high powered executive women
Yeah.
in pharma. These are very smart, brilliant, highly successful women.
Hmm.
And I was chit chatting with one of them. We were commiserating about being working moms and rising in our careers and all the things that it's a lot of stress. It takes a lot,
Yeah.
right? And I forget how it came out, but it came out that I don't have a housekeeper. And she looked at me and she's like, "You need a housekeeper." And I was like,
Wow.
"But I don't have like a big house and I mean, do I?
I'd be
Like
the
I
one
feel like that's not
cleaning
the
before they
hardest
came.
thing that I'm doing right now." And she's like, "You need a housekeeper." Can I tell you from that conversation, I
Wow.
got myself a housekeeper and it was the
Yay, good
greatest
for you.
delegation ever.
Oh, I love that. You have to delegate at home too, if
You
you can,
do.
especially if you're an entrepreneur and you find yourself working too much.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
whole different Oprah. Wow, well, good for you. And then how's that experience been? Has it opened you up to have more time for your family and more time for your business, obviously, because you're not cleaning?
And less stress, right?
Yes.
So
Oh, so
let's
important.
all just be, transparent here. All the
Yep,
housework is quite stressful and
it
nobody
is.
wants to do it. I think very
Or do
few
you wanna
people
get in
want
a
to do
fight with your spouse over it?
it. Right, right. So for me it's all of those things, right? It's less
Mm,
stress, it opens up, time. But I think that's an important point about delegation is we often say you need to delegate so your time can be spent elsewhere. It's
right.
also delegating so your mind can be at
So you
peace.
can breathe.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Breathe and relax and not have so much stress because we know how stressful even being a high powered executive or being an entrepreneur can be. That
exactly.
that's really good. That's really, really good. So I normally would ask my guests for some tips and tricks and golden nuggets, but you've already dropped them all. Unless there's
I'm so
something else
glad.
you can think of to make them feel good about getting to where they want to be and letting go of things and outsourcing or delegating to someone on their team or if they're okay, or helping encourage them to, stay in their zone and be happy for a bit.
Yeah.
If that makes
I think
sense.
the one point that I want to make is this was a journey for me to get to a point to be comfortable with delegation.
Okay.
I think early on in my career, I very much felt like if I wasn't doing it all, something was wrong with me or I wasn't adding my value.
Mhm.
And I think that is true for a lot of women. I think that we lean into that emotion more where it's we have to do it all otherwise we won't be looked upon for that promotion or that
Yeah.
raise or what the next step of our career
Mhm.
and all of that is false. So I think that's a really
Oh,
important like takeaway is
yeah.
delegation really does enable you to be better in all ways, shapes, and form, both
Love it.
professionally and personally. So lean into that because truly, if you don't, it leads to burnt out. I've been there,
Yeah.
right? I've been burnt out. I know
Mm-hmm.
so many people who have. It never ends well. So as
Mm-hmm.
hard as it is, I think, and start small. You don't have to
Sure.
delegate every big task, but starting small, I think it's really important. The other side of that is if you're talking about delegating as a manager or a leader, there's a
Mm-hmm.
difference between delegation and completely handing something over to somebody else. So
Right.
I've had this experience in some of the companies that I support where the whoever I'm talking, whatever leader I'm talking to, the CRO
Mm-hmm.
or the CMO or the CEO, they're like, well, I delegated this and it wasn't getting done or it wasn't being
Mm.
done well. And it's like you can delegate, but you still need to know what's happening in your
Yeah.
business or in your area of responsibility. So there are
Sure.
differences between completely letting go and delegating. And I think that's
Yeah.
important for people to remember too.
That's something else I always say too is trust but verify.
Exactly.
Don't just like let
Exactly.
it go and then don't think about it again.
Yeah.
Trust that you've done your due diligence in
Yeah.
selecting this person to give it to, but do your little check-ins and make
Yeah.
sure it's getting done to what your expectations are.
Exactly.
For that. Oh, great points. And I'm just so happy and humbled that you're here today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thank you. I had so much fun. I think this is a really important conversation. So thank
It
you for
is.
forcing it
I
out there
agree.
because everybody needs to delegate more.
That's right. Thank you. I love that. That's the title of your episode. Everybody needs to delegate more,
It's true.
even at home. And if it's the laundry or the whatever,
Yep,
let's do it. We have a lawnmower man. And there you go.
exactly.
All right, everybody. Thank you again for being here and for listening to me and Brooke shoot the breeze today. I hope you all go out there and you if I could say the word will be great. Delegate to elevate and you get some shit done. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
That's it for today's episode of Delegate to Elevate, Get Done. Be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen. And if this episode gave you a golden nugget or two, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Your review may even be featured in a future D2E listener shout out. Head over to Delegate to elevatepodcast.com. That's with the number 2 to grab Bonnie's free Delegate to Elevate growth roadmap. Explore past episodes and join us next time for more real conversations about getting done.